Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. How you guys doing out there today? We're gonna actually just talk about how to build an arena nuker that I thought to myself, dude, we should be able to keep this concise enough to where we deliver all the information you need to consider when building out a nuker for any area of the game. We shouldn't need a 20-minute video just to cover the arena. Hopefully, fingers crossed, you guys know how I have a tendency maybe to ramble a little bit, and I just bit my lip too. That was cool. Anyway, so we're gonna be talking about an arena nuker with Trunda as an example, an enemy or damage based on enemy max HP nuker using Royal Guard as an example, and then a dungeon nuker. We're going to use Tuok the Wanderer as an example there. So let's just go ahead and get into it and really, kind of hone in on, obviously, again, the key artifacts and masteries, and also the differences depending on where you're using these champions and where you are inside the game in terms of end game, mid game, etc. We'll get into why that matters in just a second here. So Trunda for the arena, she's in a god tier build right now, but again, this is really not about, this is kind of advice to you guys on artifact sets, etc., rather than just focusing on these champions. It could be Elhain, for example, as your arena nuker. It doesn't matter, just kind of, things that you want to employ when building them out. So in terms of masteries, let's start there. For the arena specifically, I love on this offensive, actually I love this entire build for Trunda here for the arena. So let's go ahead and take a look. I absolutely love Helm Smasher as a tier 6 mastery, especially for the arena. 50% chance to ignore 25% of the target's defense. Really solid to kind of parlay that into a Savage set, getting a 50% chance at reducing, or excuse me, ignoring 50%, ignoring 50% of the target's defense, and guaranteed at least 25% off of that Savage set. So, really love picking that up. I also love picking up Retribution on my arena nukers because usually, like in Trunda's case, they have a pretty decently hard-hitting A1 as well. So, other key masteries, I'm a big fan of Kill Streak. Increases damage inflicted by 6% in the arena for each enemy killed by this champion in battle. I also love picking up Heart of Glory. Increased damage inflicted by 5% when attacking with full HP, because usually for an arena nuker, you're going to be going first. More often than not, at least, as kind of a speed farming and nuking team. I also love picking up Bring It Down, increased damage by 6% when attacking targets with higher max HP. Generally, your nuker is a little bit more fragile, so we love to pick up Bring It Down as well. And then last but not least, we have Ruthless Ambush. Actually, two more to talk about here. Ruthless Ambush increases damage inflicted by 8% for the first hit on each enemy. And again, we're talking arena nuker here. Ideally, they're killing everybody in their first hit anyway, so an extra 8% there. And then we have speed picked up for each enemy killed by this champion, just in case the fight goes a little bit longer. So Retribution, really good. We already talked about that. And sometimes you'll want a little bit of accuracy depending on who you're using as well. So it's totally fine to negate the defense and go on the support tree as well with your arena nukers. That decision is going to be up to you guys depending on how badly you want to land those debuffs on your arena nuker. For example, a single target champion like Krutraxa. You can see I didn't go support tree on her either, but she does have this skill where she also lands a weaken. Think of champions like Sargala as well, what some people use as their arena nuker. Also going to be important that we're landing that decreased defense. All right, so let's go into the rest of what makes Trunda such a great arena nuker in terms of the build right now. So we already talked about Savage set. If you can get it, best way to go in terms of getting that extra damage, ignoring enemy defense. Ignoring enemy defense, really effective in PvP. So tag team arena and arena right now inside the game. It's also preferred by some people in dungeons, but it's really going to be, we'll talk about dungeons in a second. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. So ideally, we're putting our arena nukers in crit damage percentage. The thing you have to think about with arena nukers, again, is you're not building them with sustainability. They're not meant to be staying alive a long time. They're meant to be killing everybody in one shot, ideally. They're going to be going after your debuffers. Make sure that's really important that you have your decreased defense and or your weakened champions go before your nukers. So they're generally going to be the slowest on the team or the second slowest on the team, depending on your team composition. But your nuker should ideally be going last or close to on your team. So the idea here is to stack as much ignored defense and as much crit damage on these champions as possible so they can kill everybody on their first hit. So we don't care about building them with a bunch of defense, a bunch of HP, and stuff like that, as we would maybe for dungeons, which we'll talk about in a second. So we're trying to get our arena nukers in crit damage on their gauntlets and picking up that crit rate anywhere else we can on the substats. Again, this is really good gear that I have on my Trunda, some of the best on my account because I'm using it on my main arena nuker, but we're looking for crit rate, we're looking for crit damage, and of course we want her speed to be your nuker. We said they can't be well, we don't want them to be so fast that they're going first, obviously, but they also can't be so slow that the enemy team cuts them in line. What does that mean? You want to make sure you have your nuker kind of going where your boosters are able to catch them up. So if you can build, some people can build their arena nukers, if their team is generally kind of slow maybe, they can build them with attack percentage on their boots and get the speed from substats elsewhere on their gear and still not allow the opponents to cut them in line. However, that's very rare. We don't really see a lot of that in the arena. Mostly, I want to say 90% of the time, if not higher, even arena nukers are going with speed on their boots, okay? So speed on the boots generally is the way to go. So again, looking for attack percentage and speed and crit rate. Crit rate especially is going to be really important. When you're farming artifacts, make sure you're keeping an eye for good crit rate, even better if it's crit rate and crit damage as substats, especially in offensive type gear, crit damage gear, attack gear, or offense gear. We talked about Savage, obviously. Well, some might think crit rate gear. Crit rate with crit rate substats, solid. Hold on to that stuff, okay? So as you would imagine, attack percentage is going to be our go-to for the chess piece as well for arena nukers. So ideally crit damage, if you can find the crit rate. Also, it makes a great kind of 2 artifact set going with Savage and crit rate to help bolster up that crit rate, give you an additional 12% from the crit rate artifact set. So again here, guys, just to go over, all out damage. We want attack on the ring. We want crit damage on the amulet, and we want attack on the banner, okay? Ideally with even more attack on the substats, speed on the substats as well. So again, attack, 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 crit damage, crit damage, crit damage.
All right.
That's all you really need to know here. You're maximizing their one-shot potential, and that's it. You don't really care about anything else. So again, crit damage. By the way, if you can't get that extra crit rate to get to 100% else, aside from the gauntlets, just go with crit rate on the gauntlets. It's not the end of the world. You'll be able to farm enough artifacts to grow into that crit damage on the gauntlets. So total stats, we're aiming for 100% on the critical rate, obviously. Get that crit damage as high as possible. My crit damage is actually not that high compared to end game Trundas. Platinum tier Trundas, we see them close to 300 or more percent on the crit damage. So there is a sacrifice when you choose to go with Savage gear. I could instead go with 3 crit damage, artifact sets and get that plus 60% there. Also, again, attack, trying to get as much as we can while still making them fast enough. So there's a lot of kind of thought that goes into both speed tombing and then, stacking on as much damage as you possibly can. But if you kind of follow those principles, you will be in luck with your arena nuker. Again, think one-shot kills, think maximum damage output. Make sure you prioritize Helm Smasher, especially if you're building kind of a specialist. Now you might be thinking to yourself, dude, I use Kale as everything. He's my dungeon nuker, my arena nuker, and everything else nuker. That's totally fine. It means you're probably somewhere in the mid game, maybe even in the early game. I would not just go Helm Smasher just for the arena, but Helm Smasher is a pretty solid mastery even for the dungeons. So if you're using Kale in dungeons and in arena, I think there's a case to be made to go Helm Smasher mastery. I'm just a big fan of that mastery in general, but of course going War Master, nothing wrong with that at all as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at Royal Guard. Actually, let's take a look at Tuok the Wanderer first. Let's talk about dungeons. In terms of masteries, again, I just mentioned this. I like kind of hugging the left side of the offensive tree for dungeon nukers, and I love finishing off at War Master. I think that War Master is the way to go, especially for clan boss damage dealers, trying to get extra utility against bosses, so Doom Tower bosses, stuff like that. As long as they're not an enemy max HP champion, again, we're talking about Seers, Cold Hearts, Royal Guard. Stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I like going with War Master. Now, the exception to that rule is if they have 3 hits or more on their A1, their first skill, we're going to go ahead and replace that War Master with Giant Slayer as our tier 6 mastery. Otherwise, I love going War Master or going with Giant Slayer for my dungeon nuker. Obviously, again, if you do need, I think there's decreased speed in this kit. Yeah. So if you do need that accuracy, don't be afraid to go in the support tree as well. And again, I just love kind of hugging the left-hand side of the offensive tree in terms of masteries for my dungeon nukers. Now, this is a little bit of a different build. I purposely did not go all out in terms of the, the build on my Tuok right now. I'm a little bit shy of 100% crit rate. Again, we're really aiming for 100%, not 94, Ash. 100%, but you can sacrifice a little bit of speed compared to the arena for your dungeon nuker, right? Your dungeon nuker, again, can generally go last, but order, not as important, still important, but not as important as it is in the arena when you only generally get 1 turn. The order is paramount in those situations. For the dungeon, sure, the first round, it does matter, but then eventually, speeds are going to kind of get intermingled and intertwined and whatever as you progress. At the end of the day, though, you can go ahead and afford to, again, if you can find that speed, you can put attack percentage boots on your dungeon nuker. However, again, 95% of people prefer that extra speed for good reason. If your nuker can't go very often, then what's the point of having very high attack, right? If it takes so long to get a turn to begin with. So you're prioritizing attack percentage, crit rate, well, crit rate number 1, attack percentage, and crit damage, and then accuracy if you need it again, and then kind of speed. I don't like any of my champions falling below, even my nukers falling below around 100. Well, this is in the mid game for level 20 dungeons. I don't like them below 160 speed. That's just my preference. But if I can build a nuker to 160, I think I might have some of my single target damage dealers. I think like Little Miss Annie, I might have. Yeah, I do have her an attack percentage on the boots as well. And their speed is like, she definitely breaks my cardinal rule. 143 speed, but she's a little bit of a unique case in the sense that she has like a really interesting kit where she synergizes off of being revived. So there's exceptions to any rule. I'll go ahead and point out another exception for you guys real quick. Dark Elhane. I always put her attack percentage on her boots as well because she has an ability, especially for Ice Golem, whenever anybody gets frozen on your team, she automatically goes. So she's automatically taking this strong AoE attack, Death's Majesty. Well, it's okay to have her on the slow side because her turns are not always dictated. Her big damage is not always being dictated by speed. It's being procced by, hey, when an ally is frozen with lethal winter passive. So there are exceptions. I should have said that in the beginning of the video. There's exceptions to every rule here. So, just definitely take a moment and read your champion skills before you build them out and kind of try to always think outside the box. Try to always challenge conventional intuition when it comes to, okay, I build every champion like this. Okay, so back to the dungeon champion. I have Tuok built in crit rate. Totally cool, right? So in this set, a Frenzy set, not a very popular set, but I have them in Frenzy as well. Whatever, I had the extra artifacts lying around. Normally, again, you just want generally offensive artifacts, right? And don't kill yourself if you can't get your champion in, the perfect 3 artifact 2-piece set or the perfect Savage set or whatever you're looking for. Don't worry about it. If you have really good gear or, kind of maybe 1 2-piece set, that's all you have, but you have really good gear in the other areas, it's not the end of the world. I'm about to show you a Royal Guard who's in Daze gear, which is one of the worst sets in the game, but it's really good artifacts. So don't be afraid to use artifacts that are really good, even if they're in a crappy set. Anyway, guys, you can put attack percentage on your dungeon nuker as long as you're not dying, okay? If you're dying in Doom Tower and Faction Wars in dungeons, time doesn't matter, right? If you beat a dungeon in 30 seconds or in 3 minutes, it's not the end of the world. You just want to stay alive, and more importantly, you want to have a 100% success rate to get the best use out of your energy, which is a scarce resource in this game. It's a finite resource in this game. So if you're dying at all, if you have a 90% success rate, Well, heck, put your Nuker in defense percentage on the chest or HP percentage on the chest. Same thing with the accessories. I have a defense ring on my Tuak the Wanderer. That's totally cool. I find that rings especially are a great way to build a little bit of durability onto your Nukers for the dungeon, especially with Doom Tower. It can be very difficult on those waves. So don't be afraid to allocate, I don't know, a whole accessory, a whole ring to just making sure your champion can stay alive, right? So crit damage I still would prefer on the amulet, and again, accuracy if you need it on the banner. Otherwise, you can go with HP or defense if you want a little bit of, again, durability, keep your champion alive. In terms of total stats here again, 42k and 2100 on HP and defense makes him a fairly durable nuker for the dungeon, okay? And if he was still dying, again, I would go defense percentage on the chest. So that's kind of, the dungeon nuker, basically, long story short, is still speed on the boots, accuracy if you need it. But other than that, guys, you still want to prioritize crit rate, crit damage. You don't need to have them as fast, generally speaking, as in the arena. And don't be afraid to add defensive stats there to keep them alive. What good is a nuker if they're dead? All right, so next up, we're going to go with enemy max HP. So Royal Guard, I told you, man, I've had this dude in Days Gear for about a year now. It's the only good Days Gear I had, but it's really good, so why not use it, right? And again, for our enemy max HP, again, Seer, Cold Heart, Septimus, Royal Guard, there's quite a few of them. Husk, there's even more than that in the game. What we're really looking at is crit damage on those big, hard-hitting abilities. So Flawless Execution is going to be a great option for you guys, okay? Flawless Execution, getting that extra 20% crit damage goes a long way. Think about it like this, plus 20% on crit damage on abilities that are already doing literally 500,000 to 2+ million damage. So stacking an additional 20% on the crit damage is actually going to make pretty astronomical changes in terms of overall damage output, okay? So that's why we're looking at crit damage as a huge priority. Now, there's a trade-off there as well, right? We don't have to, I'm just talking about the enemy max HP skills, okay? We don't have to worry as much on the attack stats, as we do compared to a Tuak, for example. So when I'm building out my Cold Hearts and my Royal Guards, it does say damage based, on attack and enemy max HP. Attack is still important to have, especially for his hamstring and his razor blade skills. However, he has a great attack aura too, by the way. But keep in mind, guys, that enemy max HP is based on enemy max HP. So critical damage is going to be the best stat in terms of getting more out of the overall damage there, right? So adding as much crit damage as possible onto your enemy max HP Nukers is going to be your first priority. We still get a lot of attack on him at 4908, but let me just show you a Cold Heart, probably a better example. Everything else is pretty much the same, but I'm going to say it's fairly mandatory if you're in the mid game or, the mid-late game and beyond to really get your enemy max HP Nukers. Man, it's a mouthful every time I say it. Enemy max HP Nukers, get them out of crit rate, put them in crit damage on the gauntlets, then work on that crit rate elsewhere. So let me show you Cold Heart here. Cold Heart's tricky to build because you need a lot of crit damage. You also need that accuracy to be high so you can get the turn meter depletion out of Heartseeker. But again, you can see Flawless Execution is going to be the way to go. And her overall crit damage, this one, do I have the other one a little bit higher? Yeah, just very slightly higher. But again, 93% and 262. Yeah. It's like she's pretty squishy at the same time, right? But, if she stays alive, that's cool. Just keep stacking up even more attack. But at the end of the day, 3,200 attack, that's not that high, right? She's still doing a decent amount of damage, even with 3,200 attack on her A2, her Art of Pain. But when you think about enemy max HP, think about crit damage being the main thing that you want to pick up, even at the expense, again, of attack percentage. So if my Cold Hearts were dying again, I would go, oh, look at this. I have an accuracy on the chest. That is not out of the question on your cold hearts, especially for Doom Tower bosses where you're going to start needing in hard mode over 300 accuracy. It's okay to sacrifice that attack percentage on the chest for an accuracy on the chest if you really need it. And for cold heart, you really need it, okay? I'm not sure if I have my other cold heart in an accuracy chest as well, maybe. Let's see, I do. I have both my cold hearts and accuracy chests. Didn't even realize I did, but it's not the end of the world. I think that going defense percentage, HP percentage, or even accuracy on your chest, if you need it, is okay on these champions. My cold hearts, as we'll conclude the video right now, it's it must be the reset time right now. I got my free goodies. You guys will see that it's not going to really affect their damage at all inside Spider, for example, not having that attack. So let's go ahead and show you a quick enemy max HP explosion here to end the video, guys. I hope this video was helpful for you all. And again, on having, with enemy max HP champions, having an Archmage helmet, somebody with a increased crit damage buff, it's just going to get even more value out of those champions as well. Whirlim Frost King, another guy. So Cold Hearts will be up next. Let me know if you found this video, like I was saying, like helpful, guys. Happy to do more in-depth on a specific area of the game, but 1.8 million and 1.7 million, you know, sometimes they'll hit for over 2 million as well. It still got the job done. Granted, this team is OP and pay to win and everything like that. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying that they're still going to put out a lot of damage, even with accuracy on the chest. As long as they're staying alive. If they were dying, I would take that accuracy off, replace it with HP, or with, if they're getting targeted especially, get their HP a little bit higher, because the enemies will prioritize attacking them if they have the lowest HP on the team, or again, just going with defense if they're not being targeted. So guys, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. I appreciate you guys, and as always, take care, guys.